The Trudeau government has just announced that their trade minister will be in the Philippines in September. So I thought, let's check back on our last diplomatic fiasco with the good people of the Philippines through new access to information filings. And boy, wouldn't you know it, Canada's Public Safety Minister, the perpetually dishonest Marco Mendocino, has a starring role in these documents. And guess what? He was caught just making things up.
We invoked the Emergencies Act after we received advice from law enforcement. The advice we received was to invoke the Emergencies Act. Look, I don't want to speak for every last serving member of law enforcement, but there was a very strong consensus that we needed to invoke the Act. We invoked the Act because it was the advice of nonpartisan professional law enforcement.
Do you remember the story of the Canadian garbage that ended up rotting in the Philippine sun for years and years? 69 containers of Canadian garbage spent 6 years baking in the Philippine heat. The containers arrived in the Philippines way back in 2013 and 2014. They were falsely labeled as recycling plastics, but instead, the containers were full of disgusting, ordinary household garbage, electrical waste, and used adult diapers. Us Canadians, we were garbage colonialists offloading our problems onto the developing world. But the Philippines, to their credit, they were having none of it. They wanted us to take our disgusting, rotting garbage back and deal with it however we saw fit. The whole thing caused a bit of an international, I don't want to say scandal, but embarrassing fiasco for the clean, green liberals who just love to pride themselves and pat themselves on the back for being so darn tidy. They're just recycling, plastic banning, electric car driving, pipeline blocking, carbon taxers.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
They'd have you believe that they don't produce any garbage whatsoever. So, Environment Minister at the time, Catherine McKenna, was forced to charter an expensive cargo ship to bring the Canadian garbage back to Canada to properly dispose of it because it was a biohazard nightmare and full of termites. Some of it was set for incineration in Burnaby, British Columbia, meeting the fate it should have met all those years ago.
It's being loaded right now. It had to be fumigated. There's a long process it had to go through so that it'll be out very shortly.
Rebel News even sent a reporter at the time all the way to the Philippines, to Manila actually, to find out what Filipino people thought about the wealthy Western world abandoning their environmental sins onto them.
How do you feel about Canada sending the garbage?
I feel so degraded. As a Filipino, we are not a dumping site. So it's not easy for us to accept that a Canadian government sent us garbage. Because as far as I know, you are a developed country. So why don't you just recycle your own garbage and dump it in a proper place? Why bring it to the Philippines, right?
In fact, I think the embarrassment of the government being caught flat-footed offloading Canadian garbage onto the developing world and using the developing world as a first world dumpster. I think that's what set off the impulsive and reactionary unscientific single-use plastics ban here in Canada.
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of when we have water bottles out of plastic, away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles sort of things.
But that was way back in 2019, and now it's 2022, and the Liberals are trying their hand at repairing the relationship with the Philippines by sending the trade minister over there. I've just received a new access to information filing about the first diplomatic fiasco of the Canadian garbage and how the public safety minister Marco Mendocino was in the middle of it, trying to muck it all up. We've obtained these records through your support at rebelinvestigates.com. So thank you for making this story possible. Let's get into the documents here. Now, despite assurances in the media by then Environment Minister Catherine McKenna that the garbage would be handled in the most careful and necessary way, since it was indeed a biohazard, we can see in these documents on page 56 that the decontamination of the containers was 2 guys with an old pressure washer. We can see this again on page 57. Still 2 guys with that old pressure washer. But at least the 2 guys with the old pressure washer had a job to do in all of this. I see in these documents an appearance of the now public safety minister, make him up, Marco Mendocino. But at the time, he was just an MP, not a minister, not involved in this file, but he was inserting himself into the garbage mess and also going off half-cocked. I guess the usual for this guy, I suppose. You'll recall Marco Mendocino was the man who was so consistent in his falsehoods about the convoy to Ottawa, repeatedly telling the media that the police and other authorities had asked for his authoritarian crackdown that he delivered on peaceful protesters in our nation's capital. You can see all of Mendocino's lies and sign the petition to get rid of him at firemendocino.com.
Marco Mendocino did approve the police force to come rushing in with extra funding to shut down a freedom convoy, which is very founded in fact. I believe, personally, that he should resign and just forfeit his pay.
Well, old Marco, lying Marco, he's in the middle of this hot garbage disaster for some reason.
Here on page 378, we see a note from one bureaucrat to another
about Mendocino. Confidentially privy to traffic between Canadian MP Marco Mendocino. We will have to carefully manage this matter because Mr. Mendocino doesn't have the entire facts. Years go by and some things never change. Marco doesn't need the facts, people. He'll just make it up and then follow Catherine McKenna's advice to just repeat your lies until somebody believes them. Remember this?
You know, I actually gave him some real advice. I said that if you actually say it louder, we've learned in the House of Commons, if you repeat it, if you say it louder, if that is your talking point, people will totally believe it.
Do you think 3 years is enough for the Filipino government to be ready to tolerate Justin Trudeau's Liberals? I'm not sure, but I do know that I will again file for access to information after this next trip by the government to the Philippines. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Through your support at our special investigations website, rebelinvestigates.com, we were able to see Marco Mendocino, the now public safety minister, lying about Canadian garbage back in 2019. This guy never stops. I think this work is so important, though, to catch the Liberal government making mistakes and saying things behind closed doors that they don't think the public should ever see. If you agree with me, please consider making a donation to that special website, rebelinvestigates.com.